everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, Creating a New Workplace Roadmap, Returning to the Office After the Pandemic, sponsored by MassBio. We'd like to thank MassBio for sponsoring this very timely webinar. Before I introduce the panel, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Terry McCourt. I'm an attorney practicing labor and employment law at the law firm Greenberg Traurig. Our firm has had a long and wonderful relationship with MassBio. So we're thrilled to be able to do this. So obviously in the last 18 months, I've spent a lot of time with clients advising on COVID-related matters. And this is a very timely webinar because now our issues and our advice is shifting to issues regarding return to work, hybrid workplace policies, vaccination issues, and all that kind of stuff. I would also note that I have management responsibilities in our office. So I'm very interested in hearing the views of our panelists and getting some tips from them as well. So what I'd like to do is just have our panelists introduce themselves, give a little bit of background about what they do, and then we'll start the program and start tossing around some ideas. So Martha Brown, why don't I start with you?
Sure, thanks, Terry. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Martha Brown. I'm Executive Director of Discovery Research Coordination at Boehringer Ingelheim's research site in Ridgefield, Connecticut. While I'm representing the R&D facility in Connecticut, we do have an active presence at our Cambridge location. In this role, I lead strategic and operational functions in discovery research, coordinating local initiatives and linking them to our global efforts. Since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I've been leading the research arm of the R&D COVID response work stream, and for the last several months, I've been representing research at the BI-US Future of Work efforts. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Martha. We look forward to getting your views.
Thanks.
Melissa ONeill, could you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Terry. And a big hello to everyone on the line. My name is Melissa ONeill, and I am one of the HR business leaders at Takeda, supporting our U.S. business unit, which is essentially our U.S. commercial organization. And not only is the topic of return to the workplace top of mind for me as an HR professional, but it's obviously a significant milestone in our pandemic journey. In addition to being an HR leader at the company, I also had the opportunity to serve as one of the leaders on our USBU COVID-19 response team for the first 12 months of the pandemic. So it's exciting to see the evolution that we've had from March of 2020 to where we are now with preparing for and implementing our approach to our hybrid working model. There's no question, obviously, that the pandemic changed the way we live and work, but I'm excited about the new opportunity that resulted in all of these changes to really reimagine our workplace and what that means and what that looks like. We're listening to our people about what's most important to them and designing an approach to balance both our business priorities with the flexibility people need to get their actual work done. And we know this will require a shift in mindsets and ways of working, but I'm excited for the journey. And selfishly, as someone who has chosen to be in the office nearly every day for the past several months due to my own personal circumstances, I'm also really excited to see my colleagues back in the office as well.
Thanks, Melissa. I think the attitude you're taking as an HR professional in terms of being excited about reimagining the workplace is really fantastic, and is a great attitude that I think we can all learn from, as opposed to being all stressed about it. So look forward to your views. And Tim, if you could please introduce yourself and give us some background.
Sure, thanks, Terry. Hi, everyone. Tim Dietline. Greetings from Chicago. I am the global managing partner of Heidrick & Struggles Healthcare and Life Sciences search practice, and Heidrick & Struggles is a global executive search firm. So we work with clients across all industries to place CEOs, board members, senior level executives, and I personally focus my search work in the biotech space, so spend a lot of time in and around Boston and Cambridge. I'll be able to share my thoughts on Heidrick as a global professional services firm and how we're managing through our current situation and how we see the future, as well as broad insights that I see across the industry and how different biopharma clients are handling things and thinking about the future.
Terrific. Appreciate you being here, Tim. Why don't I start? I'll start with Martha and Melissa, but Tim, feel free to jump in. But I'm starting with the two of you just because of my understanding that you've both, played a role in terms of serving on your company's COVID task forces going through the difficult last several months. And would love to get your views and just in terms of how that experience has informed your judgment as companies, begin to go to the next phase here, return to work, hybrid, whatever it might look like. Martha, do you want to start?
Sure, yes, and you're right. So the last 15 to 16 months has been challenging and has also been very informative about how we want to move forward. So in the last 15 to 16 months or so, we've, as I'm sure many other organizations have seen, outstanding agility and resilience amongst our people, as well as the importance of empowerment and trust. We also learned that we can work really effectively in a remote and hybrid setting, and that's saying something for a scientific lab-based organization where the bulk of our work is done on site at the lab bench. So navigating through this time really highlighted some important learnings, as I just stated, but it also showed us that there are challenges to it. There are stressors that we learned about that came about for our people, and also challenges to our ability to collaborate, co-create, and to sustain our culture, which is also so very important for us. That I wanted to share, we made sure that we kept a keen eye on mental health and the physical wellness of our people. That was certainly very important, and that's going to continue as we go forward to figure out how to live this kind of new hybrid world. And before turning it over to Melissa, I also wanted to state that the learnings I think that we gathered in those areas we're now incorporating into a philosophy for our future of work. I mentioned flexibility, trust with accountability, coming together for moments that matter to us in order to support collaboration, co-creation, those areas that we found as stressors. And we're also going to take a continued data-driven approach. Data was so important for us to leverage. We were all looking at what was coming out from the CDC and our state and government organizations, and that will continue. We are, like I said, as a scientific-driven company, and in research and development, data is what we do every day, as we do as a company as well, and that certainly will continue.
Great. Thank you, Martha. And without, reiterating all of the points that you made, because I think you summed up so many of our key learnings that we probably all experienced so nicely. I think something additionally to add as one of our big takeaways from being part of the COVID task force was really seeing the need to pivot and adapt quickly, either as the virus evolved or as guidelines and mandates shifted. And I see that continuing as we reimagine our future workplace. So, our hybrid model is a new way of working for everybody. And we know that we don't have all of the answers right now, just like we didn't, throughout the pandemic. And I think it's important that we remember that some things will go well, but we'll also run into challenges. Maybe technology doesn't work, or we miss an important opportunity to collaborate, or, whatever else we may run into. And I think that's okay, right? Our goal is to learn from these experiences so that we can continue to get better. And I also think it's important that all of us kind of remain open-minded and we continue to be open and honest with employees in terms of what we know and what we don't know, while also continuing to check in with folks and evolve our ways of working as we learn what works and what doesn't. And I know, it's been said, but this is obviously a journey, and it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, just as the last 16 months have proven. And we'll continue to listen to that feedback and learn and adjust our model as needed.
Thanks, Melissa. Tim, I'd love to hear your views on this as well, and also perhaps you could address a little bit in terms of the world of recruitment and retention, in terms of what's happening and the challenges or opportunities that you see in that space.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. And I will give kudos to Martha and Melissa and Boehringer and Takeda in how you're thinking about the future. An observation I will make is that we do have clients that remain in a mode of kind of when this is over, and treating talent acquisition that way, and treating talent acquisition as a kind of, here's how we're going to handle the situation for now, and then when it's over, we want X, Y, and Z to happen. And those clients and those individuals are losing. They're losing what is clearly a significant talent battle, and the rigidity in thinking hopefully will change for a lot of these folks. But I think organizations that are thinking about how the situation over the past year and a half has actually accelerated a series of good trends when it comes to employment, when it comes to culture, when it comes to employee retention and motivation, are thinking the right way and will win and will attract the premier talent to their organizations. So that's kind of the looking back part. The looking forward part, I think, and Melissa and Martha, you guys will have a view on this as well, is we're not going back to me having to go have lunch or dinner with every candidate before our clients see them in my waistline. Thanks everyone for that. We're not going back to needing to meet every candidate in person and come to the office, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what we are seeing at the executive level is a real need and desire now, given the advancements that we've made with the pandemic, to start to see 2, 3, 4 finalist candidates in person, whereas a year ago it was the exception. Now it's becoming the rule, and I think what we're seeing is the ability to compress the cycle at the front and be far more efficient around how we interact, how we assess, how we understand individuals earlier in the recruitment process. But once we get to that, to the I call it seeing the whites of each other's eyes stage, the need is for face-to-face, and people are still coming up with creative ways around it. We actually have a CFO client flying from Boston to Missoula, Montana to fly fish with CFO candidate to fly fish with the CEO client, because it's outdoors, and they really have the opportunity to get to know each other, don't they?
That's for sure. Are you seeing an increase, Tim, in terms of candidates becoming more aggressive in seeking opportunities as we come out of the COVID stage, or was it always pretty healthy even during COVID and all the times of virtual recruitment?
Yeah, good question, Terry. I would say in the biotech space and biopharma in general, it's been a very robust market for the past 5 years, and talent has been open to opportunity. I think what we've seen in the past year and a half is again at the more senior levels, the investment in the space is driving the need for talent and the war for talent just tremendously. And so as a result, individuals, have no choice but to listen to opportunity. So that's a factor. There are other individuals who have also used this as an opportunity to say, you know what, I've made enough money. I don't need to work 70, 80 hours a week. I want to live my life the way I want. And they've found other ways to go about living their lives. That creates opportunity. But I think the reality in our business for I think the foreseeable future is that demand is outstripping supply, and that's the current environment.
Let me just make one quick PSA, which is that anybody in the audience is welcome to ask any questions by just dropping them in the chat box, and we will do our best to get to them. In terms of just sort of shifting gears, and I'm going to ask each of you this question, and you are free not to communicate any confidential information or anything you're not comfortable saying. But since you're all in such terrific organizations, if you don't mind sharing, would you mind just discussing your own sort of back to work or back out of the COVID darkness work plan? Maybe Martha, if you don't mind starting, if you're comfortable sort of discussing that.
No, sure, I'd be happy to. This is a very important topic, certainly for all of us. And I wanted to start just with a few big statements. So we consider this to still be an experiment, and it's an ongoing experiment. I mentioned how we're data-driven, and linking that to this experimental approach. I think Melissa kind of touched on this as well, that we see how it's going, we listen to all of our people, and if we need to pivot or adjust, we will moving forward. So I also mentioned what we've learned coming through the last 15 to 16 months, and that will certainly stay very linked to that around ensuring that we maintain a sense of community and collaboration and co-creation, and what those stressors have been thus far. And so that's why we have put together in very broad strokes the following plan, with the understanding that should new data come up, we'll need to pivot. So as I said, in broad strokes, we're taking first steps to a soft opening this summer to allow employees who have not been in the office in the last 14 to 16 months, again, those are not our essential employees, not the scientists that have been on site, but the others, giving them time and the ability to prepare, get comfortable with that idea, and also to take the time to juggle personal responsibilities. There's childcare issues to think about, elder care, a lot of personal topics that people will need to work through to start to shift back to a full reopening, which we're targeting for this fall, with an eye towards a more flexible approach to working. Now, an organization in business like BI has multiple and very different organizations within the umbrella, and lots of dynamics to consider within each organization. So the future of work for R&D is going to be different than other parts of the organization based on the business needs. What we do know is that where we're going to is not going to be identical to what we've had for the last 15 or so months. And it's also not going to be exactly like what we had in pre-pandemic. It's going to be more flexible as per the specific role in a specific part of the BI organization. I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does. And I just have a follow-up question for you, Martha.
Sure.
You used two terms, full reopening and flexible approach to working. I noticed you did not use the term that everybody uses called hybrid. So are you drawing a distinction between what everybody's calling hybrid versus a full reopening? Is that?
I'm not. No, thanks for asking that question. So I could clarify. No, so hybrid, flexible. Every role is going to be different. I mean, we have scientists who the bulk of their time will be on site. But we've learned that, it is very productive, in fact, for folks who are on the bench to also spend time elsewhere, planning their experiments, analyzing their data. So what will their week look like? That's going to be a discussion with their supervisors. Is that hybrid? Sure, it's not like what we had before, right? Where everybody was there every single day and all of that work, or the majority of it, was done on site. So flexible hybrid, I'm not intending to draw a line between those two.
Okay, thank you. And
Sure.
I think it's very interesting that you are not singling out the people who have been working remotely and saying, okay, you all can be hybrid, but you're also focusing on those essential workers that have been coming in and saying you also have flexibilities. That's a very interesting nuance. Why don't we turn to Melissa, if you don't mind sharing what your thinking is on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of similarities to what Martha shared as well. So within Takeda's USBU organization, we're viewing our home office-based employees as hybrid employees, and are taking a flexible approach to what that hybrid model will look like, with our work really guiding us in determining when and where we come together. So, we know that there will be times when it'll make sense to come together for face-to-face meetings, particularly those meetings that would benefit the most from open dialogue and interactions with one another, like brainstorming sessions, innovation, team building events. There are certain trainings and onboarding sessions that, are just more effective in that face-to-face environment. And other times, we know that remote work is best, like, focused work time, being creative and innovative personally, right? Having that time to think, and even some of the administrative work that goes along with all of our roles. And then we also know that there'll be work that can be accomplished effectively both in the office or remotely, like one-on-one meetings or weekly team meetings, town halls, things like that. But on average, this means that people will most likely have multiple in-person interactions each week, even with that flexible hybrid approach. In some weeks maybe more, other weeks maybe less, but again, really ensuring that it's driven by the work that's needed to support our customers and our patients, or presents opportunities to build our culture and relationships that we've all been lacking and wanting over the past 16 to 18 months. And we feel as though the hybrid approach really allows us to combine the best of both experiences by giving the flexibility and the productivity of having folks be able to work from home when needed, coupled with sort of that connectivity and the effectiveness that in-office engagements provides. And although, like I said, I've been coming to the office, our offices are currently open to all of our non-essential employees and have been for quite some time for those who wish to use them. Similar to what Martha was sharing, it's expected that the new hybrid working models will be operational by September. And over the summer, we're encouraging employees who have been working remotely or haven't been, in the office to start utilizing our facilities to get reacquainted with the building layouts, the amenities that are here and open, and sort of test out and experience that hybrid model early. We know that this approach will slowly ease folks into getting more comfortable with the hybrid model, so that by September, employees are ready to fully engage in the new way of working. I think Martha alluded to this as well, but knowing that back to school happens in September, there's lots of things that'll probably be challenging for folks in September. We're really encouraging sort of doing that test and learn this summer.
Thank you for that. Not to get too granular, but in terms of dealing with, say, administrative staff, people that are entitled to overtime, that kind of thing. I think lots of employees say, I'll do the hybrid model. I get Mondays and Fridays off, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody's up for that. Are you needing to drill down further so say to like certain members of the team or teams to say, hey, we have to have mandatory coverage, so it's going to be rotational or that kind of thing? Have you gotten to that level?
It's a great question, Terry, and I think we're taking that on really a case-by-case basis, and we're really empowering our leaders and our people managers to assess those individual circumstances based on the team. What are the team needs to drive that work, as well as the individual needs, and really working from a functional leadership level down to the employee to really kind of look and see what makes sense, both from a business standpoint and getting the work done, but also assessing each person's individual needs. So I don't think, unfortunately, there's not a one size fits all to that, but it's really making sure that we're working with each individual team and kind of empowering the managers and leaders to do so.
Terrific. Tim, would love to hear your views on this subject.
Sure, thanks. And I would say a couple macro thoughts and then dive a little deeper. One is a lot of similarities between our three organizations and how we're thinking about this philosophically. As a global firm, and your organizations are global as well, it's really remarkable how each individual market, city, office needs to be thought of differently as far as reopening and the cultural implications of remote work versus the importance of office-based work. And it's very, very different from region to region. And obviously, very clearly, the progression of COVID is very, very different from region to region. So we're all just very delicately working through that, and that will continue for quite some time. Here in the U.S., we're a professional services firm, right? So the notion of flexibility has been a part of our environment for quite some time, right? Those of us at senior levels are used to being a combination of on the road, in the office, at home when convenient, in the market, et cetera. And so when this in March of last year, for us to go remote as an organization wasn't a huge adjustment. Now, going forward, we have all of the same considerations that our clients do, and that Takeda and Boehringer Ingelheim have around interpersonal interactions and teamwork, and the importance of younger and more junior level team members being together and being in the office and having the ability to see good behavior modeled, and in some cases see bad behavior modeled, and build their career accordingly. I think that's a big part of what's been missing for the past year or so, is the opportunity for people to really kind of model their own career path after what they see on a day-to-day basis. So similarly, our offices have been open and available for people to come in for quite a while. I go in probably twice a week, which is about what I was doing in the past. You'll see I'm in my home office today. I chose not to make the commute to downtown Chicago, and I think that's going to be a big consideration for us. Our offices are in major cities around the world, and people not having to commute and not taking that time out of their daily lives, I think is going to be a big consideration. But I will say, I was in the office yesterday. Each time I go in, there are more and more people. And I think that for us, being back in the office is going to be driven by the energy of the people who do go and have positive experiences, and that proliferates throughout the organization. And so we don't have any specific deadlines or targets. I think it's a general feeling of this summer will be one in which people adjust, and then in the fall and going forward here in the U.S., that there will be a hybrid, a flexible approach to this that I think will feel pretty natural. to the organization and to our employees. I don't think it'll be a major adjustment.
Thanks, Tim. I know we all work for large, multinational, multi-location organizations, and your point is really well taken, I think, in terms of taking each location into account. I'm recalling during the early days of our lockdown and talking about reopening, I would have a much different conversation with my colleagues, say in Philadelphia or New York, than Tampa or Dallas, mainly because of public transportation, right? I mean, and those concerns still exist in terms of the staff, but you're absolutely right. It's you just can't do a one size fits all. Let me pivot because we have some good questions coming in. So I just would like the chance to pick your brains and to respond to some questions coming in from the audience. And the first question is, in a hybrid environment, how do you create an equitable experience for employees? Great question. Who'd like to grab that one?
I can start, and feel free to Tim and Martha to jump in. Obviously, as we've talked about, we're all aware of how much the pandemic has changed the way that we live and work. So many of us have learned that we can be more efficient and effective virtually than we ever previously thought possible. And then also, as we've discussed, right, there's something that is missing, and people are feeling that sense of loss in terms of spending the time in person. So to help sort of drive that inclusivity amongst the USB organization, and I think Martha might have talked about this a little bit or alluded, we're calling and instituting community days with our goal being to build those connections by aligning, key meetings and events with fun activities that may draw people into the office. And those community days may be worked around with key meetings like town halls and trainings and speaker series or DE&I events, or even community engagement events like volunteer days and patient speakers. And then other days might just be purely fun, with ice cream or food trucks. But I think starting sort of that sense of inclusivity and sense of belonging and in the hybrid type model that we're working through. And just as a real-time example, we've recently unveiled our newly renovated space at 500 Kendall Street. And today we're actually hosting an ice cream social for folks that want to come into the office, see the new space, which definitely has a buzz with being such an iconic building for the life sciences industry. So I think small things like that to kind of build that inclusiveness but also knowing that people are at from an equitable standpoint are at different phases with the hybrid model.
Thanks, Melissa. And Martha, please go right ahead. I'm sorry, I was just unmuting there for a moment.
Oh, no, that's quite all right, Terry. And I just wanted to underscore I love the phrase community days, Melissa. That's a very nice way to state it. So similar thinking on our side, and in addition, inclusivity, we recognize, drilling down to more as the individual, we need to rethink and to some degree how we conduct meetings, right? As we're all part of, as we just said, multinational companies, we are used to having what we're now phrasing hybrid meetings, where there will be colleagues in another country gathered in a room and people in the US gathered in a room, and we're meeting with them in a virtual way. But drilling down more thoughtfully about how to conduct meetings so that virtual participants feel as included in the discussion as those who may be in the room together. So all of that's really together important to ensure that each employee feels included, whichever environment they're in at the moment.
On the question of equity, Martha, just curious, because you had referenced earlier that you have obviously lots of essential employees coming into the office every day. Equity from that perspective, we all have certain employees that have had to go in there every day through some really difficult times, sort of literally putting their health at risk. How do you do something to make those people feel like, oh, great, now everybody's coming back, and what about me? I've been doing this forever. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. No, it's a very important point. there are a number of approaches there. First of all, there's the importance to recognize what the essential workers have been doing and moving our projects that are so important for our patients forward through this time, through the pandemic. So recognizing that and doing everything we can to support them both from a mental health and a physical safety perspective, and continuing that, not letting up. In a way, this connects back with the data-driven, right? We always watch to see what the latest guidance is and incorporate any and all the safety measures to keep the folks who are on site, whether they have been on site for the last 15 months or more, or going forward, to keep them safe. So I'm sure there's more, but those are the two main things: the recognition of what everybody has done, and continuing to stay focused on being adaptable and cognizant of the safety guidances.
Excellent. Tim, any thoughts on the equity question from your perspective in terms of return to work?
So I'll share a quick story of this notion of bringing people together for the right reasons. Last week we have quarterly global calls for my practice, it's probably about 250 people around the world. Obviously, most of the time there are people who gather in conference rooms in different offices. A lot of people would do them from their offices and or phones, depending on where they were. So always been a bit of a virtual exercise. Last week, we have a pretty sizable team in Chicago. I invited everyone who wanted to come in to come in person, and we would do the meeting from our conference room and use the technology. And I think about 12 people took me up on it. And as we got to the time for the meeting, my assistant and I realized we no longer had any idea how to use any of the technology in the conference room. And it was an unmitigated disaster. And we basically did the meeting in the conference room with everyone looking at their laptop on Zoom, because that's the only thing we could figure out. So it was an experiment that for the time failed, but I think we're going to see lots and lots of those situations, and we just have to go after it with a kind heart and a sense of humor, and the best things will happen. In our business, one of the big challenges that we always have is people not turning off in a professional services business. And this is the case for any business, of course, but in professional services, you're always always on your client's calendar. And that really got exacerbated in the past 14, 16 months. And we've tried hard to get people to turn off when they need to. And that's a different answer for different individuals. And we've tried things like no Zoom Fridays. We've tried to get people to do internal meetings over the phone like we used to versus Zoom, so that you can get out of your home office or just not have to stare at yourself on a screen. So those are the types of things that we're thinking about. We don't have kind of an inequitability challenge necessarily brought on by COVID. It's really we're very focused on how to help maintain the mental health of our employees because there's been real impact.
That's for sure. We have about 5 minutes left. We have another question I'd like to share with the group. This deals, I think, with the situation where someone has been working remotely the last 18 months or so, and that they have concerns about returning to the work environment. And so the questioner is asking, what changes to the work environment have you made which would reflect thoughtful and safe considerations for employees coming back into the workplace? I think this really is a question asking for maybe some practical tips in terms of things that you're thinking about or things that you think are working. Feel free for anybody to jump on that one.
So I can start again. So with our COVID response teams, we have been meeting, daily, especially in the early onset of the pandemic, multiple times a day sometimes. But really, that has always been at the forefront of our decision making, is the health and safety of our employees, and that's continues to be at the forefront as we transition back to this hybrid working model. We know that there are, as the virus has progressed and has gotten better in certain parts of the country, we've been able to loosen some restrictions, maybe here and there or whatnot, but we are constantly looking at that. And as Martha has mentioned over and over again, sort of that data-driven approach. We have a strong epidemiology team that we work with on a daily basis to look at those things. And again, just pivoting as necessary to ensure that the health and safety of our employees are at the forefront. Whether that's, heightened cleaning, air filter qualities, health screens and checklists and things like that. But really looking at that is absolutely at the forefront of our minds every day.
And are you communicating that frequently to employees to say, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, just to?
Yeah, and I would say sometimes maybe overly communicating. No, I think though, Terry, you bring up a really good point. And I think throughout the pandemic, there's no such thing as over communicating, right? And making sure that people feel comfortable, because as things progress, what does that look like? What do these changes mean for me? And we have a microsite where we keep all of our updated guidance and things like that is updated, as routinely as it needs to be. But then also, communicating, staying in very close touch with employees on what those changes look like.
Yeah, can I jump on that one too?
Yes, please.
Melissa? Thank you, Terry. A similar approach, and I just wanted to add a few things that we're also listening to feedback, constant reaching out for feedback from the folks who have been on site this whole time, and that'll continue, to hear what the experience is and how all of those safety measures and infrastructure changes that have been implemented, how they're impacting people and how they're coming across. There's also, keeping an eye on the total number of people in common spaces and in the building as a whole has been quite a focus and required lots of coordination with our facilities management people, our occupational health, all the services that go along, security with the site, which has people on site, certainly. So expanding our hours, making hours flexible, expanding the services that go along with it, like a cafeteria hours. These are additional things that I'm sure many have thought of and that we have as well and implemented. So the communication and listening, the constant cycle has been constant, really.
Excellent. Just a heads up to our panel, we're getting down to about a minute or so left. Tim, I'd be happy to give you the floor if you'd like to share some observations.
Yeah, it really, our situation, quite frankly, is less complex than Martha and Melissa's from a workspace standpoint. Our space is generally not our own. Here in Chicago, our offices are in the Willis Tower, which is a city unto itself. And so I think what we will be doing is rethinking how we use our space based on how we come back to work and how we interact with our clients in our workspaces. Our workspaces are very focused on collaboration and meeting space, and I don't think we know how that's going to play out going forward. So we're taking the approach now where we respect each individual's thoughts on their own health and safety, and we'll be flexible going forward.
Thank you all. So I think just a final observation from me is, and maybe you all would disagree with this or not, is that we're not going down a path and then get to an endpoint and return to the past. We're going down a path and we're not sure exactly where we're going, but we're definitely going down a path that's going to be different than what we had before. And I think, Tim, you had said at the outset that you think there's really no going back to the old way. So So I want to thank all of you. My only regret is that we didn't have more time together because I learned so much from you guys, and it was delightful to meet you all. So thank you all for your time. We're going to sign off now and hope to talk to you again soon sometime.
Melissa, enjoy your ice cream social.
Thanks. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.